What allows a machine to endure not merely fire and steel,
but
time itself is resilience,
born from thicker armor
or from the quiet intelligence of
adaptation.
War does not reward
permanence.
It rewards those who learn faster than destruction
can keep pace.
The tank, once conceived as a crude answer to immobile slaughter,
would survive not because it was invincible,
but because it evolved again and again in silence under fire.
Under fire.
This is not the story of a weapon that could not be destroyed.
It is the story of a technology that refused to remain obsolete. In the early age of armored warfare, protection was measured in weight. Steel plates were thickened. Angles were adjusted. Survivability was a matter of mass and momentum. It was a simple arithmetic. More armor meant more safety. But war is never simple for long.
By the mid-20th century, the battlefield had shifted. Anti-tank weapons grew smaller. Cheaper and more lethal shaped charges ignored thickness. Kinetic penetrators laughed at tradition. The tank, once feared, became vulnerable. Sometimes catastrophically so. Nations faced a grim realization. If armored warfare was to survive, it could no longer rely on passive defense. The problem was no longer how to resist impact. It was how to defeat it. The solution did not emerge from a single laboratory or a single nation. It emerged from
desperation. Engineers began to ask an unorthodox question: what if armor could react? What if protection was no longer static, but active,
aware of the
threat, responding before penetration occurred? Early concepts were met with skepticism. Explosives placed on armor sounded reckless. Sensors fast enough to detect incoming projectiles seemed unrealistic. Computers making life and death decisions in milliseconds felt dangerously abstract. Yet the idea persisted,
not because it was elegant,
but because the alternative was irrelevance. The tank could either learn to fight back defensively, or fade into history.
Theory met reality under
battlefield conditions. Composite armor appeared first, layering ceramics, metals, and synthetic materials in complex geometries designed to disrupt energy rather than absorb it.
Then came explosive
reactive armor. Tiles that detonated outward, neutralizing shaped charges before they could bite deep. The first uses were imperfect. Some solutions endangered nearby infantry. Others worked only against specific threats. But the psychological effect was undeniable. Weapons that once guaranteed destruction began to fail. For the first time in decades, the tank was no longer merely enduring the battlefield. It was contesting it.
The enemy adapted,
as enemies always do. Anti-tank weapons evolved tandem warheads. Attack profiles shifted toward top-down strikes. Missiles became smarter.
Drones entered the equation.
So armor evolved again.
Active protection systems emerged.
Radars, sensors,
and interceptors that destroyed incoming threats
mid-air.
Survival became a system, not a surface.
Defense was no longer a shell, but a network of decisions made faster than human reflex. This forced a deeper transformation. Tank crews were no longer just operators of steel. They became managers of information, trusters of machines,
participants in a
dialogue between human judgment and automated defense. War had become cognitive.
The turning point was not a single
battle. It was a realization. Armored vehicles equipped with modern protection systems began surviving engagements that would once have been fatal. Losses decreased.
Tactical
confidence returned. Commanders planned with armor at the center again. Not as expendable assets, but as survivable instruments of maneuver. This was the moment when militaries understood survivability was no longer about armor thickness. It was about integration, technology, doctrine
and training fused into one coherent philosophy.
From this point forward,
armored warfare could not return to the past.
The tank had crossed the threshold.
Not toward invincibility, but toward resilience. Today's battlefields still destroy tanks.
No technology has repealed physics or chance. But modern armored vehicles endure in ways their predecessors never could. Their legacy is not dominance, but persistence.
They shape how wars
are planned,
how forces advance, how risk is
calculated.
They also raise uncomfortable questions about automation, escalation, and the narrowing window
for human intervention. Protection
saves lives, but it also prolongs
conflict. The balance remains uneasy, as it always has. Every era believes it has reached the edge of possibility. History has a habit of proving otherwise. The technologies that made tanks nearly indestructible also revealed a quiet truth: protection invites
challenge.
As defenses grew smarter,
threats grew more patient.
Precision replaced brute force. Surveillance hunted survivability itself.
The battlefield widened into space,
into networks,
into the
invisible domains where armor offers no shelter. Modern tanks can defeat missiles,
confuse guidance systems, and survive strikes once
considered terminal. Yet they remain bound to terrain, logistics,
and human decision.
Fuel still burns,
crews still tire.
Command chains still fracture under pressure. No algorithm can fully predict chaos. Invulnerability,
it turns
out, is not a destination.
It is a horizon that
retreats as one approaches. And so the tank stands today not as an immortal machine, but as a paradox,
more protected than ever.
Yet more exposed to a battlefield that no longer ends at the sound of impact. Its future will not be decided by steel or sensors alone, but by how wisely humanity understands the limits of its own creations. Because in war,
the most dangerous illusion
is not weakness. It is the belief that survival has been solved. When protection reaches its peak, the question quietly changes. Not how to survive, but why. The technologies that shield modern tanks have carried warfare to a threshold where machines endure longer than the political certainties that deploy them. Armor now reacts faster than thought. Systems decide before doubt can form. The battlefield has become a place where human intent arrives slightly too late,
yet beneath the layers
of composites. Sensors
and automated
defenses. The tank remains a human instrument. It advances because someone orders it forward. It fires because someone authorizes the moment. Its survival,
however
advanced, is still tethered to judgment, fallible,
emotionally and shaped by
history. Here lies the final tension
as machines grow
harder to destroy. The cost of using them grows heavier. Survivability reduces immediate loss, but it stretches conflict across time.
Geography and conscience wars do not end when weapons become resilient.
do not end when weapons become resilient. They end when decisions do. Beyond steel, beyond machines. The future of armored warfare will be decided not by what tanks can endure, but by what societies choose to endure with them. History watches patiently. It always has
one strategy revolved around sacrifice.
Losses were calculated,
expected,
absorbed. Armor was committed with the understanding that destruction was the price of progress. That calculus has changed. As tanks became harder to kill, they ceased to be merely expendable instruments and became strategic anchors. Their presence now shapes planning before the first shot is fired. Routes are chosen with survivability in mind. Timelines stretch.
Commanders hesitate.
Commanders hesitate, not out of fear, but out of awareness that protected forces invite prolonged engagement. Survival alters behavior. Armored units that endure can hold ground longer. Exert pressure without collapse. And influence negotiations without advancing a single kilometer. Protection has become leverage. Not dominance,
but persistence.
Quiet,
relentless, and
difficult to dislodge. Yet this endurance carries a shadow. When survival is expected, escalation becomes tempting. Risks once avoided are now entertained.
Strategy shaped by resilience, edges closer to endurance
contests rather than decisive resolution. History has seen this before in different forms, under different banners,
whenever
survival improves. War learns to last,
and in wars that
last, the meaning of victory grows dangerously thin. Steel
rusts, circuits
fail. Even the most advanced systems will one day be obsolete. But the idea that save the tank endures. The belief that survival is not static. That defense must think,
adapt, and
respond. War listens carefully to such ideas. Then it tests them mercilessly. Weapons can be destroyed.
Ideas rarely are.
And
some once born
refuse to die.